These heavy steel bars are designed to keep hardened criminals out of our society and out of our lives. But not even a security system like this can always stop love. Today on Rolonda, you're going to meet some women who have stories about how they fell in love with convicted killers. Some of them courted in prison, some of them married in prison. The question that we're asking is, why do some women fall in love with convicted killers? We think that's something worth talking about right now from Los Angeles on Rolonda. Welcome. This is one for you. I tell you, the women you're going to meet on today's show all met the men that they're in love with after those men had been charged with murder. Sandra London says she lost her virginity to Gerard Schaefer. He is serving a double life sentence for sadistically slaughtering 2 teenage girls back in 1972. That romance broke up, but Sandra says she's in love once again. She's engaged to marry Danny Rowling. Now, many of you may remember this man as the one convicted of mutilating and murdering 5 Gainesville, Florida college students. The sex slayings of 5 University of Florida students in August of 1990 was simply horrifying. It was a killing spree that was so brutal and so widely reported, it became the nightmare of every college student and every parent across this nation. The killings began just days after Danny Rowling came to Gainesville. Months earlier, Rowling had shot and beaten his own father. He'd been drifting ever since. On August 24th, he broke into Sonia Larson and Christina Powell's apartment, where he bound and slashed and stabbed and raped the women. Body parts were later found in plastic bags. The very next day, Krista Hoyt was raped and literally sliced open, even decapitated. 2 days later, students Tracy Pauls and Manny Tabota became Rowling's final victims. Rowling was caught holding up a supermarket. He was linked to the slayings almost by chance. In February of this year, Danny Harold Rowling pleaded guilty to his crimes, and a 12-member jury unanimously recommended the death penalty. Sandra, despite our showing some really graphic, horrific shots there, I was watching you during that whole time, and every time Danny Rowling's face came up, there was that smile of a lover from far away. How do you fall in love with a man who's been convicted of such gruesome murders and mutilation?
Rolonda, it happened against my will, really. I fought it for months.
Fought loving him?
Yes.
How did it happen?
He contacted me because he had read a screenplay I wrote about another inmate that he was incarcerated with, and he liked the screenplay and wanted me to work with him to help him tell his life story. He wrote to me in June of '92, and we started corresponding. And through the course of working together on this story, we became more close personally. And eventually I found that I was reacting to him. I didn't want to, of course, as a journalist, it's a taboo for you to get involved at all in a story. And then I found myself being involved personally, and I didn't want to admit it, and I had a long conversation with Danny about this. I said, look, I can't tell people I'm in love with you. It will ruin my credibility.
And what did he say when you told him that?
He said, oh, baby, I understand perfectly. I don't want you to go through this, and I don't want you taking the heat for my crimes, people, taking it out on you for what I've done. And I won't say anything, and you don't say anything. But immediately as our story broke, prison informants told reporters that we were in love and that he was in love with me and that I was not in love with him. I was fooling him. So I felt I had been outed in a sense, and I was being accused of insincerity, that I didn't love him.
What is Florida's most notorious killer like? I mean, as a person, what is there to love about this man?
Okay, Danny's a very complex personality.
I'd say.
The way he experiences himself, he sees himself as having multiple personalities. The diagnosis the psychiatrist gave in court was possession syndrome. In other words, Danny Rowling is possessed or haunted.
So why would you fall in love with somebody like that? There are 50 million people out here who have not committed murders as such a mutilation, who are out here available.
Okay, well, you want to look at what kind of person is he. different people may commit a certain violent act, but they're completely different kinds of personalities. So when you look at him as a person, you say, what kind of person is he? He's very talented, he's very sensitive, he's very passionate.
What did you say?
He's a sick man.
Yes, he is.
And you're just as sick as he is.
Okay. He is sick.
So,
Let me
but
answer
answer
that.
what that lady said, because that's what a lot of people watching are
Right.
going to say. That lady is out of her mind. Are you crazy?
Because it's not, he is sick and he knows it, okay? What does he want to do about it? He did commit these terrible acts and he knows it. What does he want to do about it? You take people like John Wayne Gacy that we can talk about freely now that he's dead and he won't sue us. They have a totally obnoxious attitude about what they've done, and they're very unpleasant personalities in real life.
But Sandra,
A guy like Danny Rowling wants the world to understand how this could have happened to him, because he feels that it's possible that other people may be struggling with compulsive violence and the kinds of spiritual...
So now the guy who decapitated women, raped women, strangled women, killed them, mutilated them, wants the world to understand him?
It's not what he did, it's how it came to be. In other words, what went into the making of a serial killer? That's true.
From the audience.
You know, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I mean, aren't you afraid for your own life? I mean, what if he turns on you? You know, I mean, he's in prison, you're safe, but, I mean, you guys should get together. I mean, aren't you afraid for your own life that he may, just like he killed those girls.
He might turn on you.
Yeah.
You have a very good question, and it's a very good point. Danny Rowling, I know well enough to know his personality that he's not like that, but the other serial killer that I was involved with, George Schaefer, he is like that, and he does want to kill me.
So why would you love him?
I don't love Schaefer.
But you love Rowling,
I love
and that could happen.
Danny's not like that. I can just tell you what kind of person he is.
We'll come back, because I know you have some comments. We got to take a quick break here, and when we do come back, we're going to get the reaction of the mother of one of Danny Rowling's victims. We're going to hear what Sandra's own daughter has to say about her mother's fiance, and also later in the show, we're going to meet the woman who married the Los Angeles Hillside Strangler. Many of you may remember that era. We'll be right back after this. You have a comment?
In no way can I take away the pain that I've given to others. And in no way can I expect forgiveness from anybody.
I recall the day I first saw you. I reached out to say I love you, but it was hard to say. I couldn't touch you. So tell me, baby, what were my words? All my tears run together.
And that is a song from Sandra's lover. That was Danny Rowling singing to Sandra there, Sandra London, in court before the judge sentenced him to 4 life terms for the murders of 5 Gainesville, Florida college students. You have a comment to make.
I want to know, how do you know he won't turn on you? What are you basing your opinion on? Because, I mean, he's crazy. He can turn on anybody, even someone he loves. Maybe he doesn't even understand love.
Sandra?
When you say someone's crazy, you're more or less discrediting them. In other words, whatever they are, it doesn't matter. Danny has mental problems, but he's a human being. And insofar as I've come to know him within 2.5 years, I have a pretty good idea of who he is. Secondly, he's gotten a lot better.
Let me
and
introduce you to a
he's not in the kind of state of mental chaos he was when he was out running wild.
Let me introduce you to a lady who's never met him but knows Danny Rowling all too well. Diana Hoyt's daughter, Krista, was one of Rowling's victims. When you hear a lady sitting next to you who says she's in love with the man who killed your daughter, your reaction?
She's a very calculated person. She knows, first of all, that Danny Rowling will never get his hands on her. She will never be by herself with him. She has nothing to lose that way. She has no fear. She's never going to be alone with him. She is using Danny Rowling just like he is using her. She is making a profit from everything that he has done.
This is one of the things that Sandra's working on. This is Dan's Fans newsletter. What's this about, Sandra?
I don't know why people write to people they don't know anything about except that they've committed terrible crimes.
And you
But
published
they
this?
do.
Dance fans, letters from the fans.
Yes. They write to these people not knowing them at all. And they...
Why, though? Why do
don't know
people,
why they
what's
do.
the fascination with convicted killers?
I think a big part of it, the people that write to Danny and to other, you know, whatever you want to call it, name criminals, is that there's collectors who want to get their autograph. I think that's basically why
The
they write.
reason they do this is because of somebody like Sandra here that keeps this going. She keeps something printed all the time. She brings something out about him, and she makes him more well-known than what he was.
Let's go back to your daughter's situation. Tell us, please, in your story, what Danny Rowling did to your little girl.
Krista was a very sweet person, very lovable, and very generous type person, and he stalked her. He watched her, I guess, for several times. He broke into her apartment and was waiting for her. He gagged, bound her, raped her, kept her alive for a period of time, told her what he was going to do to her, so that she realized what was going to happen. And he ended up killing her, stabbing her. He left the apartment scene and he came back. By this time, he decided he would pose her. And so he went ahead and committed some more crimes to her body after she was dead. He decapitated her, gutted her, posed the head on a bookcase to shock people when they came in, posed her sitting up on the side of the bed. This was all calculated. He thought this out, and this is what he wanted to present.
And Sandra, this is the man you call your man that you are in love with? Are you aware of these things?
Of course. What I'm saying is that I came into this situation to research what's wrong with Danny. And Danny is one of the only serial killers I've ever been aware of who wants that to be understood, who is not playing games, hiding, trying to be something he's not. In this case,
Are you going to be one of the women who gets married to one of these guys? You want to marry him?
I'm engaged to him.
And what will you do with a man who's on death row? He will never get out. Is that the kind of relationship that you want to have?
I would rather, you know, not, it's not great, but that's where he is, you know.
Let me introduce you to Sandra London's daughter, Angel, who has asked that we disguise her identity. Angel, thank you for joining us today. Angel, this man, Danny Rowling, could possibly be your future father, stepfather.
I don't really think of him as my future stepfather.
What do you think about your mom's falling in love with the serial killer?
What do I think about it?
Yep.
I don't like it. I mean, she's my mother. She's not, you know, Donna Reed. But I don't hate her or anything for it, you know.
Do you understand this?
No, not really. I have to say, it's like, it doesn't really affect my life, you know. I mean, I don't live with her. When I look at this, it feels like watching O.J. Simpson or something, you know. I don't.
So you're very removed from it,
Yes,
you say. But
very.
you could possibly have this man in your family. Are you concerned for your mother's life? You've just heard from Diane about the viciousness that this human being carries within himself.
I know, and it's, I agree that it's like very bad. I mean, it's very sick, but I'm not concerned for her life because, you know, just like that lady said, she's not, you know, he's in prison.
From the audience.
He's not going to get out.
Yeah, I was just wondering, do you feel like a savior, or do you have some kind of mother issues here where you feel like you need to take care of these men and defend them or something?
Sandra?
I'm researching what's wrong with them insofar as they want to reveal it. And Danny Rowling wants to show what's wrong with him. If we can come to understand how these tragedies develop in the lives of the offender years before, maybe then we can close the circle and see what kind of things we can do as a society to keep from breeding more Danny Rowlings.
From the audience.
Hi, I want to know how this makes you feel. I mean, doesn't it make you sick to know what he's done to these girls? And what if it was your daughter? Would that still be okay? Would you just say, well, he's a person like everyone else? If he killed your daughter and cut her up and cut her head off and did all of these horrible things, you wouldn't care? It would just be okay because he's a great guy or something?
No, it is really sickening. I mean, the crimes he committed are probably the most sickening I ever heard of. What he did to Krista Hoyt, it's almost beyond belief what he has done. I would like to just take issue with one small minor point that she made, that she said that it was calculated what he was going to do. According to Danny, that is not the way he experienced it. He did not plan to do these things. As the psychiatrists have testified, his condition is considered a form of possession, or in other words, there are forces in his personality that take over at a certain point. It's not a matter of his sitting down and making a plan and saying, I'm going to do
He
this.
also testified during the trial that he went to see a movie a few nights before he killed Krista, and the same thing was in the movie.
Okay, you talked about a possession issue. This lady lost one of her most prized possessions,
right,
and that was her daughter. We're going to continue this conversation. The headlines called him the Hillside Strangler. His series of killings left Los Angeles gripped in fear. When we come back, we're going to meet the woman who fell in love with a serial killer. Right after this. I'll start with you.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode of Rolonda, and I hope that you'll subscribe and follow so many of my other activities on my Rolonda channel, including some stand-up comedy, some podcasts, some great auntie advice, and loads of laughs and lots of fun. So subscribe and stay tuned. Now, let's get back to the show.
We're talking today about women who fall in love with men who kill. Some of them serial killers, malicious, just horrible murders. And yet, women we're talking to today are madly in love, some married to these men, while after they were charged with murder. You had a statement or comment?
Yeah. How do you know he's not lying to you and saying whatever you want to hear? Because, he has nothing to lose right now. And he wants somebody to be on his side and trust him and say whatever.
Naturally, I check my facts. And Danny has not been, has no background at all for being a liar in terms of, he's telling the truth. There's a difference.
Well, the only thing I can see coming from this, I can't see anything physically coming through this. I mean, there's got to be something financially. Is there going to be a book out on him soon?
Yeah,
screenplay?
We finished the book.
You
yes.
finished it, but
Just finished. We started out doing a book. There's no secret agenda. The whole purpose of our relationship from the beginning was to do a book. We became personally involved after the fact, after beginning to work on the book.
So you're staying with him now?
Staying with her. Okay, but let's move
many
down.
Many people form personal relationships with people they work with. It happens all the time.
Wait a minute.
Let's go down to Louisiana now via satellite. Joining us live right now is Shirley Book, whose courtship with serial killer Kenneth Bianchi began when she sent him a letter following his conviction in the sex strangulation murders of 10 women here in Los Angeles. I know many of you were saying you remember the Hillside Strangler. Shirley corresponded with him through the mail, over the phone, eventually married him in a 15-minute ceremony, a ceremony that came after meeting him for the very first time only the day before the wedding. Kenneth Bianchi, who became known as the Hillside Strangler, got his name by dumping the naked bodies of his murder victims in the hills in and around Los Angeles. It was a killing spree that lasted almost 2 years. Experts called him one of the most savage killers in history. Police believe he may have killed as many as 13 women. The lady joining us now live via satellite from Louisiana. Shirley, you fell in love with this man?
Yes.
And how did this happen?
Through the mail.
How did this happen, Shirley? Shirley, can you hear me?
What happened?
Yes.
Can you talk to me? Can you hear me, Shirley?
Yes, I can.
What was it about Bianchi that made you fall in love with him?
He was very charming on the phone.
On the phone. Were you aware of all the killings that he was responsible for?
He told me he didn't do it.
And you believed him?
Yeah.
Did he ever scare you?
No.
And you went to a point of marrying him?
Yes.
What did your family say when you said, guess what, I'm going to marry a guy I met yesterday who happens to be one of the most vicious killers in history?
They didn't like it.
Uh-huh. How did they show their dislike for it?
They wouldn't have nothing to do with me.
How do you explain to people who have a real tough time understanding, Shirley, how someone could fall in love with such an evil human being?
Kenneth is not evil.
How can you say he's not evil when he's been called one of the most vicious murderers in history? Hello?
He's not evil.
Okay.
For you to set up and say he's not evil after he killed 13 people, you must be a sick puppy that's inbred yourself to just sit there and understand and sit back and say, he's not evil. He's not evil.
Shirley, there are a lot of people who do have a real problem understanding this. How do you defend what you did?
Kenneth has to answer to God, and that gentleman, I forget what I was going to say to him.
From the audience.
This is for Sandra and her.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, now these men, they're locked up. You know, they committed these crimes, and usually when they're locked up and commit crimes like this, there is that popularity. I'm wondering if they weren't locked up and they were still roaming around and you knew that they had done these crimes, first of all, would you report them, or would you still feel that same way about them if they weren't locked up?
Yeah, Sandra?
I'd report him in a heartbeat. And I don't think Danny and I would get along if he was behaving the way he was before he was locked up. He beat his wife, whom he loved desperately. He had a lot of trouble getting along with people at that time.
So I understand, Shirley, that you are divorcing Ken Bianchi now. Why?
There's a lot of problems.
11 for sure.
No.
What's the problem that you have?
Because it's infecting my son's life.
And how old is your son?
22.
And how is it affecting his life?
With girls.
They're afraid of who his stepfather is, I would think. Okay. When we come back, find out how one woman fell for and married a convicted triple murderer after seeing his picture in a tabloid newspaper. Something it's hard for most of us to understand at all, isn't it? We'll be right back in a minute.
Between the land of the living and the land of the dead, there's a place they call death row, where all the fallen angels slowly go insane. Looking at
Women falling in love with men who kill is something a lot of us cannot understand. But Judy Malecki has another story. She says she saw a picture of Daniel Gringas in a supermarket tabloid, and she said she knew immediately that he was the one for her. He's currently serving 3 life sentences for murder and rape. His last victim, he strangled with her own shoelaces. Judy is now Mrs. Daniel Gringas, and why? Explain how you fell in love.
Well, first I have to correct something. He's not in for rape. That was a misprint, and they did a lot of. Oh no! He's not in for rape. No, rape is a very serious thing, especially to say on national TV. No. Rape is even more serious. No, he's been all the
Judy.
No. You can't say it was in for rape because all the newspapers have
Well, okay,
have retracted that.
I tell you what. Let's deal with murder.
All
Let's
right.
deal with
We'll
a
deal with
triple
murder.
life sentence.
Fine, but
Why
no
do you
rape.
fall in love with someone like that? How? Why? What is it about?
Well, Rolonda, I'll tell you. All my life, I just couldn't stand to read or hear about any man or any person that would murder somebody else, or anybody that was under that type of influence where they would do something terrible to another individual. And I couldn't stand it. Yeah, I couldn't stand it. I would turn the TV off, and when I read about Daniel, and it wasn't what I read, it was just something about his face. His eyes haunted me. I don't know why.
So what did you do after you were haunted by these eyes? Then you did what? You started writing him? You went to the prison? What did you...
No. Because he's all the way in Canada. He was in Saskatchewan at the time. I live in California here. But I put the tabloid away, the picture of him, in the drawer for about 3 weeks. And I kept thinking to myself over and over, well, I'm going to write this man just a little short note of compassion and say, well, I don't know if your crimes, what I read, are true or not, but I would like to wish you well. You know, I didn't know. I said, you haunt me, something about you. And lo and behold, I didn't realize it, but on his birthday, I wrote him a letter not knowing it was his birthday, and it impressed him so. Well, he's Cancer, and he's real sensitive. He's got that sensitive side, you know. But you like that? Anyway, but he, I don't know, it was about 2 weeks later, I received this magnificent letter from him, typewritten. He had just learned English, and he's French. And I was totally taken away.
Do you ever talk about the murders? The strangulation of a young girl with her own shoelace?
Well, he claims innocence since he was involved with somebody else.
Oh, I think these two ladies are lunatics.
I thought the same thing. I thought the same thing about others.
I guess everyone heard that terminology, that the lights are on and no one's home. There it is.
Yeah, maybe, but we all have our special needs. I don't know what they are.
Your 8-year-old son served as the best man in your wedding?
No, honey, he was my grandson.
Grandson.
Yeah.
So how do you explain this to him? How do you explain this to a child that you just married a killer?
Well, first of all, Kyle is his name. He's a very mature little boy.
You'd have to be awfully mature to understand
and
this.
He used to make the travels with me to Canada all the time. He was my little traveling companion. And actually, the day that I was to be married, it was very special for him. He grew to like Dan. Dan was very, very caring of him, even though we would see Dan through glass at that time. He couldn't touch Kyle, and Kyle couldn't touch him except at the wedding. But Kyle loved him. And he became like a strong male figure because he would say, look, you know, I'm here. I'm behind bars. Don't you ever do anything wrong and end up where I am right here. And on the other hand, Kyle was very impressed with the fact that he was allowed to go into a federal prison. You know, and in Canada, they're different.
How do you
from here.
explain to your grandson that when his new granddad was out on his birthday release from prison after his first murder, that was when he killed 2 more people? The birthday is very symbolic to him. He killed 2 more people out on his birthday pass.
Well, so they say, even though he's fighting that. I don't know if it's true or not, honestly. But,
what about his bad temper, the fact that you've already left him for a few months before because you were frightened by his temper?
Well, actually, it was my temper that was... I wasn't frightened at all. I said to him, I'm not afraid of you. I was in close quarters with him. It wasn't his temper, it was mine, because I was enraged over things that were happening, because it was difficult for him to relate, even though we had seen each other for years behind glass. Now, all of a sudden, we were thrown together in a condominium, and I mean a condo, all alone, and it was difficult for him to be in without, I guess, companionship, a woman being with him for years, to what he would write me in letters and what he would say to me behind glass was totally different than being face to face with me.
What was the difference?
The difference is that he was frightened. He actually was frightened more than I ever got. I wasn't frightened at all.
You had a conjugal visit with him?
Oh yes. In fact, I'm going back in December to have
How
another
does a
one.
killer make love? How does a killer make love?
He was fantastic, although we didn't do too much of that because we had to get used to each other. Even though I was married to him at that point, I think for 2 years, 2.5 years, and I had been with him 2 years prior to that, I wasn't used to him. I didn't know this man. So we were both strangers to one another. It took the second trailer for us to really warm up to each other. He was a gourmet cook, though. He did all the cooking, cleaning.
And he's also a killer. When we come back, we're going to find out why one woman says she was attracted to serial killer John Wayne Gacy. It was the most horrifying series of killings ever revealed. John Wayne Gacy, a contractor, did volunteer work with children as Pogo the Clown, raped and strangled 33 little boys and young men, burying 27 of them in the crawl space underneath his own house. It took 14 years to put Gacy to death by lethal injection, and during that time, he had developed almost a cult following. What were you going to say about all of this?
I wanted to know, you said that your fiance or whatever is, they said he was possessed. is it possible that you are being influenced by that same demonic activity? And also for all three of you all, have you all been to see a psychiatrist to find out why you're feeling like you do?
Sandra? Okay, there's two questions. Let's start with the possessed part. It's a psychiatric diagnosis. It's not a spiritual condition. In other words, as a psychiatrist who examined him put it, this is the way Danny experiences what's wrong with him. That is not to say that there are actual demons, okay? And
Possession means being empowered by demonic
yes,
activity.
Sir. Yes,
demons.
sir, in spiritual terms. This is a psychiatric diagnosis. And within that particular framework, they were very particular to say, we, the psychiatrists who examined him, are not saying that Danny Rowling has a demonic spirit. They're saying that this is how he experiences that part of himself.
He's a psychopath.
No, he's not a psychopath.
Just FYI, the statistics show that 20% of the prison population convicted killers are psychopaths who have a high rate of going back, committing murder, rape again.
He's not a psychopath.
From the audience.
I have one thing to say. I'm not sure about you, but looking at the rest of you, and especially her, I thank all my friends and Small Tribe for helping me get off drugs.
Believe it or not, we talk about John Wayne Gacy, one of the most notorious murderers in history. So many people wanted to meet the serial killer that he had them fill out applications with a picture attached. Thousands of those applications came in, folks. You're not just talking to a few women here. That is sick. Well, of one of those applications, Lauren's was one of them. Lauren, you know, it's so hard for us to understand this. I mean, I'm almost just at wit's end about it. I can't understand why somebody, a John Wayne Gacy especially, 33 little boys dead.
That they know of.
That they know of.
Absolutely.
Did you get a great sense of pride by coming on saying, hey?
Absolutely nothing. And my reason, Rolonda, and I'll tell you, was they contacted me because of the fact that I was an acquaintance of him. Not anybody that was fascinated or in love with him, and I will explain to you how I came about it.
Okay.
I befriended another man, and again, befriended. I'm not in love with, I'm not fantasize over with another gentleman that is on death row that was a cellmate of his who was convicted on one murder, not that one makes it any better than 33, but that there's overwhelming evidence, and I'm not vulnerable, I'm not gullible. I brought with me today stacks of actual court documents that there's no way that this guy should have been convicted. And of course, everybody says, yeah, sure, he was a charmer, he's a con artist. But even before I met the man or talked to him, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a paralegal, but after I even just read these papers, there's no way that this man is guilty.
What was John Wayne Gacy like?
Meeting him face to face was absolutely, you would never believe this man could do the things he does. And folks, I believe that he was 100% guilty and that he got exactly what he deserves. It was not about, I don't know if I even believe in capital punishment. I can't even make that. That's not even an opinion I have to give.
What gave you the impression that he was 100% not guilty?
I shouldn't have said maybe that was strong terms.
Well, he's dead now because he was guilty.
The evidence was so overwhelming, I can't see how you would think anything but that. Nothing but that at all.
Was he a mean person? Did he have an evil spirit about him? When you were sitting there talking with him, what was...
Gacy was a great actor. He had his act down pat, okay? He knew he was a very charming guy. He had a great sense of humor. He looked like somebody that you could pluck out of a Ford plant and, you know, would stop at a bar on the way home, have a couple beers, and go home and watch TV. I mean, he just was like, you know, he boasted about his...
What did your family say about this?
My family, it was like one of these things where the attorney friend of mine was a client of mine. We started talking about serial killers. It was never anything that fascinated me more than the average person. He simply said, you know, started showing me letters from like Charles Manson. Then I'm thinking, well, this is crazy. And at one point I started speaking to this John Pecoraro, who was the other person. And he said, my friend Gacy wants to meet you. I didn't seek it out. I wasn't one of these people that knew anything about his life. It fell in my lap, and I went.
This is your brother. This is your brother?
No.
Your brother. Whose brother?
Judy.
Judy's brother. When Judy came and told you that she fell in love and married this man who's 3 life sentences now?
Murder.
Well, he'd be out
Murder.
in 15 years.
What was your...
My reaction was
really.
bad news. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't like the idea at all.
Philip.
The rest of the family outed her, you know.
Yeah.
So, but then I talked to him several times on the phone, went to Canada, and after the last time I talked to him about 2 weeks ago, you know, I like the guy now.
You do?
I do. I
And
like
you
the
have no
guy
problem
when
with
my expressions back and forth talking to him, you know, he's right on guy.
If he were
Seems
getting-
to me, by my impressions.
Do you have a tolerance for this because he's not going to get out of prison?
No, not at all. We talked about, you know, going out, you know, 4 of us, 3 of us, 4 of us, double.
Boy, I
But,
tell
see,
you.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've heard pros and cons on his guilt.
Okay.
You know.
All right. We got to take a quick break. We'll be back. We'll be back in a minute. We'll be back.
So I hope you're enjoying this episode, and I hope you will subscribe and continue to enjoy. Just wanted to let you know that my voice acting masterclass is now digital. If you are somebody who's interested in being a voice actor, please go check it out. Go to Rolonda.com, Rolonda.com. That's my website, and you can check out all the details and even enroll in my voice acting masterclass. Hey, you'll never know how good you are until you try. Now, let's get back to the show.
Before we bring in Jack Levin, who has made a career of trying to understand what goes on in the mind of killers and the people who are attracted to them, let's get some more audience response to this. Yes, you had it.
Yes, this question deals with all 4 women. Obviously, the relationship that you guys have with these guys that you're engaged to guys in prison is a very safe relationship. You don't have, it's not a regular relationship. Are you guys using these men to hide from dealing with the real world, dating normal guys in the real world? Are you using it just for attention?
Lauren?
I'd like to address that. First of all, I am not in love. I am not engaged. I have a very nice life outside. I have a normal job that I'm successful at, and I have no fascination with them. I would do this if this was a woman, if it was a child, anybody that I feel is wrongly convicted. So leave me out of the fascination and the love thing, because it's not that.
You just have a fascination, though, with this person. Or
Not with this person. To me, what's fascinating is the fact that somebody that can be convicted with no evidence and is held up there because he's not a Gacy or he doesn't have money like OJ's or the Ramirez or Menendez brothers, they're not going to even look at it. They're not going to touch it.
Okay, from the audience.
That's what I'm fascinated with.
Yeah, I feel like these ladies have been sort of attacked today, and I would just like to know why they love the men, how they love the men, you know, just their
we don't
feelings.
know. At least I
mean,
don't.
if you could just
as I
elaborate,
said,
yeah.
you know, I don't know how I ever got involved in that.
Sandra?
I'd like to go back a little bit, how I got started in this. The boy I dated when I was 17 was the nicest boy I ever dated, which was what my family said. They liked him better than any boyfriend I ever had. They took him on vacation with me. My grandmother, my aunt, everyone loved him. He was a socialite. His family belonged to the yacht club. He was as nice as anyone could be. I spent a year with him as his closest companion. Lo and behold, 9 years later, it turns out, bang, he's a serial killer. This is a shock to me, and I wanted to know how this could be possible. How can you know someone so well and they be perfectly coherent as a personality? You see all sides of them. You know them day in, day out. You have sex with them. You know, you sit around with them. You don't see anything. And how could it be possible that they have a secret life of violence going on?
Jack Levin is a professor. Jack
Levin
Levin is a professor of sociology and criminology at Northeastern University in Boston, and the author of Overkill: Mass Murder and Serial Killing Exposed. Help us here, Mr. Levin.
Well, how do you explain something this incredible? Well, first of all, I think we ought to keep in mind that love is irrational in the first place, and we have a 50% divorce rate in this country. 2, we are dealing not with these women, but we're dealing with con artists who are behind bars in some cases. You know, they are the cream of the crop when it comes to looking innocent. That's the secret of their success. That's how many of them lured their victims in the first place. That's how they stay out of the death chamber for so long.
Most of them are like that.
And that's right. And I think what I'm saying really is, first of all, I've met some women who've married killers, and they've been intelligent, moral, decent people. They're not, I think this is something that may be missing. And the vulnerability is our fault. We imbue these guys with celebrity status. We make them into superstars. They are so desirable. They appear on the cover of People magazine. Jeffrey Dahmer was voted one of the 25 most intriguing people of 1991. They sandwiched him.
So what does that
between
say about
Angelica
our
Houston
society,
and Elizabeth
Jack?
Taylor.
What does that say about our society?
We have no heroes. We're taking these guys who have, for the most part, are monsters, and we're making them into superstars. And keep in mind, this is exactly what they want. I just brought with me today some mass and serial murder trading cards. I mean, we used to put baseball players on those. There's a Jeffrey Dahmer comic book that used to be reserved for Batman and Robin. But here's Theodore Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, Albert DeSalvo, Angelo Buono, Herbert Mullen.
And you can read all on the back about the victims and the rest. And
they have the batting averages on the back,
They're making money on this. That's what it's all about. These killers, these people that are publicized so highly, I mean, everyone is making money on them.
That's right.
And that's the way it is.
Some of the women who get involved are given purpose in life. I mean, their whole life is literally devoted to showing that their man is innocent.
Right.
And by the way, once in a while it's true.
Jack, when we come back, I want you to explain what kind of woman is it that goes and falls in love with a serial killer, goes to the prison. What is the psychological thing behind all this?
You can't determine that. You can't.
Okay, well, we'll try to after this. We're talking today about women who fall in love with men who murder, and I just wonder, is there a profile of the type of woman who falls in love with serial killers, convicted murderers?
Well, it's really a mixed bag, and there are a lot of women who potentially could. And I think, for example, of that field trip that a lot of college students take, for example, in a deviance course. And they go to a prison, meet some inmates, and then they start corresponding with an inmate. And, they see that person as a human being. They don't see the image, they see the reality. And keep in mind that even Hitler had a private life, and, death camp doctors went home to their kids, and if there was Little League in Germany, they probably attended a Little League game to see their son, hit the home run. Yeah. So, people compartmentalize. We never see all of a person. These women have only seen one part. They say they've seen the whole thing, but it's not true. They've only seen a slice.
Jack, I've worked in a lot of prisons, and I've worked with a lot of people who happen to be on death row, and I have come to understand that they're not always bad people in life. They're people who make bad decisions. But to go as far as to marry and fall in love and start thinking about family with someone who, that's...
okay, it's true. Now, for some women, at least they know where their man is at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, that may be a positive thing. But that's only some. And for others, for example, they share that special place with their man that he does not share with anyone else. And that makes them feel special. And I don't put that down. Everybody wants to feel special.
From the audience.
Well, as a president of a nonprofit organization that works with families of prisoners, keep in mind that by the turn of the century we'll have 230,000 people in prison. None of us are immune to this situation. You've seen the most bizarre, but also think about the ordinary.
Mm-hmm. Besides, there's a lot of reasons, that these things happen with these individuals. Drugs. We're rampant with drugs in this country now, and it alters the personality. It does so many things. I have a son that becomes violent when he's on drugs. He's been in prison. He's in prison right now for that very reason.
From the audience.
And when he's off,
I just wish stupidity was a crime, too, so you could spend the rest of your lives behind bars with these sicko boyfriends of yours.
Well, I hope you never get in that position. I find it.
I don't know. There just seems like there's no reality here. And the fact that your children, your grandchildren, aren't you concerned with how that will affect them?
My children are grown, all of them. And naturally they don't like the idea of it, but my grandchild is fine. He's absolutely fine. He looked up to Dan like a father image, like a good, because Dan represented himself to this child as a decent human being, as a person that was concerned about him. So he doesn't think that Dan has committed these crimes or even realizes it, you know, because to him he's just a man, a strong, tall man that cares about him.
And we'll be right back after this. Is there anything... I was just talking to Diane, and I was being very honest with her, and I was telling, what we were just talking about is I felt didn't want you to feel insensitive in this kind of setting, but you said that you were happy to be here to make a point, and that is what?
I believe that the focus should go back to the victims and families that are left. That I think that there is a great story to be told there. And I think that's what people should be hearing through all of this. Not what these people have done, but who is left and what they have had to suffer through. And these people that are sitting there making money off it is still making our life horrible. They are victimizing us again.
We'll see you next time on Rolonda. Thank you. Thank you for your courage.